I've probably been traveling pretty consistently for about 5 years before I started to really get that I'm leaving money on the table. And it came with kind of watching the way one of my coworkers would accidentally use his travel credit card.
Hey, welcome to Travel Tuesday Happy Hour, where we interview dope people doing dope things from around the world. And we are in season 4, voyage 22. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and hit that notification bell so you know when the episodes drop. And today we have the amazing Yomi. Yomi, tell the people who you are.
I am Yomi Tagunde. I am a good friend of the Benjamins. I work as a forensic accountant and I am a chief diversity officer. And I'm a mentor within the Royalty Project. And I also have my own coaching practice. I'm Coach Yomi. And I have a program called Reclamation. And to get y'all to where relaxed and chill, we have Bougie Girl Gum Drops. And so that is my Delta 8 THC gummy product.
Now, she wouldn't be African without so many hats. So we're going to actually get into that next. So where are you from?
So I was actually born in Kentucky, raised in Texas, by way of Nigeria. So my parents are Nigerian. I'm a first generation American.
Nice, nice. So when growing up, were you like threatened, I'm going to send you to Nigeria if you don't?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Apparently that is the only place children are raised.
And so talking about like being in Nigeria, when was the first time that you went?
Oh, wow. I was 19.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was after my maternal grandmother's passing.
Oh, wow.
And that was my mom's first time being back in Nigeria since she left in the 70s.
Oh.
So a little over 20 years for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the first time we were there for about 3 weeks. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, that was absolutely my first international trip.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible. I just remember having this moment when I went to meet my dad's family and his sisters and seeing all of these versions of me.
Oh, wow.
Like I was clear that these are my people. I came from these people and I'd never experienced that before. Like having, just there's something that's special and magical in just having family, blood family, and in those big celebratory spaces where it becomes home, whether you've been there or not. And so that was my experience of Nigeria that first time, and then like family, just with that connectedness.
It's a huge contrast to Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you're 19, you're pretty much an adult at that point. Have you traveled prior to Nigeria?
The furthest I'd gone at that point was Disney World.
Okay.
With the drill team.
Okay. So you're 19 years old. You go to the motherland for the first time, your mother's and your father's land for the first time. Like, what was that experience like?
I mean, it was interesting. And actually, what I'll say is I think it was very foreshadowing. And that I know that there are a lot of children who would not have been able to handle that transition from America to Nigeria with the level of grace that I did.
Okay.
And because we were everywhere. We went from, the king, or well, at the time he was a chief, my uncle who was a chief, from his house to the villages, to the, so I mean, we were everywhere. Okay. And some places, if we were fortunate, somebody was bringing our water in.
Definitely.
In other places, we were just in front of a bucket, and that was what it was.
Gotcha.
And so it was a very humbling experience, but I feel like, and again, this is why I said it was a bit foreshadowing. It made it clear to me that I didn't actually need a lot to be comfortable.
No.
We are, look, I own a company called Bougie Girl. I get it. But, I think part of being able to appreciate and be as grateful as I am,
Mhm.
it's because I can exist in those spaces
Nice.
and still find comfort and always be surprised at how little you need to have a good time.
Okay. So do you feel like this triggered your like the start of your desire to travel?
No.
So what started your travel desires?
It was really kind of accidental. It was for me, it was more curiosity.
Okay.
Um, Work. So I got into accounting,
Mhm.
and this was around the time of the Iraq War.
Ooh.
And, there was like, I've always had like a political nature. And I remember when this was happening, wanting to just know for real what was going on.
Okay.
And I applied for a job at Halliburton immediately after graduating in 2003. And I did not get that job, no phone call, anything. And then I became an internal auditor. And I started looking for a job again. Halliburton called me for an internal audit position.
Nice.
So I went there, and it was amazing because in that role, I knew that I would be able to travel to everywhere there's a Halliburton office,
Right.
Halliburton KBR office. So my first trip with KBR was to the Congo.
Oh wow.
So I went to the Congo Republic, and the beautiful thing was we're there for 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 weeks.
Right, right.
So, you're there for, and depending on your nature, I mean, me, I was out there hanging out. I made friends with the ladies of the nights. Before you knew it, I was getting my hair done where they get their hair done. I was going out on dates with them and their old Italian boyfriends, and I was kicking it. I had a great time. But of course, I mean, that was kind of, it was available to me because I was there on a project adjacent to where it was, old white men and old white engineers working. So I was in what they called the white quarter.
Mm.
So, like being in that space, but then also figuring out, okay, the only Black women who are coming into this quarter are working women.
Mm.
And then but in that space, I also just developed a completely different appreciation for women who are working women,
Mm.
sex workers, because, we in America, we have this like vision of it where it's this dirty, thing that you do to fill your drug habit. And I'm like, these women are taking care of families and building homes. And I mean, look, not everybody, obviously, but I was able to have a different appreciation that allowed me to move in those spaces without judgment
Mhm.
and have a really good time and see a country in a very different way than I would have been able to do otherwise. So, and that was my first trip was to Congo, and then I planned a layover through Paris because before I went, I started practicing my French,
Mhm.
and then so from there I did a layover to Paris, and I was there mostly by myself, and I think that was the time when I think John Legend had just had an album come out. I remember walking around that city with my my iPod,
Mhm.
with my iPod, like listening to this John Legend soundtrack, like I'm in my own movie. But it was that was when I got it. Like, and that trip was so incredible. I mean, it taught me so much, one about the type of worker, employee, company representative I want to be. A man died of a heart attack. One of our primary contacts during that audit died of a heart attack while we were there. And I literally took the last picture of that man while he was alive, um, because he had taken us out to like his summer home. He was a French man, and he brought his family to live with him there. And they were actually away at that time, like just for a few weeks. But he had been talking about how stressed he was and was chain smoking the whole time. And you could see that anyway. He ends up dying of a heart attack. Then I remember kind of thinking, okay, we ought to chill with his team. And then somebody I worked with, I was a junior accountant at the time, said, no, 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 we need to go back and finish this. And I remember in the middle of that interview, this woman crying and knowing in that moment that I'm going to stand up
Mm.
for myself. Number one, because I died of a heart attack.
Right.
And then two, it was so disrespectful in the way that we approached, being in another country, because I just don't think that would have happened in America.
Mm.
And to see how we were willing to discard somebody's grief and the fact that they were even at work the next day. I remember just kind of thinking about who I want to be as I represent this company in this way. So And it's shaped me as a traveler and as who I choose to show up at work as.
So, as a traveler, what inspires you to travel? Like, what's that one thing, or what are the sets of things that you look for when you go to different places?
When I plan a trip, mostly it's around what I'm going to get to eat. And then,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a foodie and then a traveler. So it's like I plan my places around that. But really, I don't actually look. I say yes. You ask me where to go, I'm gonna say yes. And I don't really have a lot of parameters around why I will say yes because for me, it's really about like humanity,
Gotcha.
like getting in touch with humanity, meeting people, seeing that we're all the same in so many different ways. What is fun, is fun. It might look a little different. It might be a little substance fueled in some places, but like it just reminds us that humanity, like we really are connected. And that's what I love about it is I used to do this thing where I would just talk to the taxi driver about, like his view
Uh-huh.
and every country just kind of get a quick, that felt like that was the most honest place
Right.
to get a perspective. And, at the end of the day, a lot of people are like, I don't care about this or that because I just need to be able to take care of my family. And how much they care about this or that is actually fueled by if they can take care of their family.
Mhm.
And, I think that that's kind of the human part of it all.
Oh, that's nice. So you mentioned that you are pretty much open to going anywhere, but do you still have a bucket list, or do you have like a list of places you're like, these are some places I need to hit before I croak?
Yes, I do. To be honest, I had a bucket list and I went to every place on it until we got to Morocco.
Oh wow!
So Morocco was the last place of my original bucket list.
Oh,
And so now I need to create a new bucket list. Like I haven't had the inspiration to do another one, but I do not need to go to the Maldives.
let's make that happen.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We need to do the Maldives.
So, what's been your most memorable trip?
There are two trips that I call my favorites. The first one was I did this like trip through Greece. It was a tour. So I started off in Greece and went down to Mykonos and then to Santorini. And it was just fun. I was with good people. I was young and could drink every night, wake up and drink some more. And I mean, we just had fun. Like during the day, we would do tours and, do things that were somewhat educational. But then at night, we just kicked it. And it was just such a good time and met so many different people, just fun. I just had unadulterated fun in Greece. And then the next trip on this, or the most meaningful, was probably whenever I went to Ethiopia. And at this point, I'd probably been to over 50 international cities. I traveled a lot for work, and it was to amazing places. And I started to feel like I was trading, like there was a trade off involved
Explain.
where I got to do these wonderful things and I'd be somewhere 2 to 3. I was in a different country every month
Oh wow.
for like 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Come along for a couple of weeks, turn it over, get back on, and then boom, I'm in another country.
Right.
So I'm doing this and I'm not able to meet people. Like if I met a guy romantically,
So let's take that back a little bit. So your first trip, you're trying. So if I understand what you're saying, as things progressed, right? You were really able to move around like you did your first trip.
no, I mean like at home.
Oh, at home. Okay.
Home.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. When I would be back home,
Okay. Gotcha.
I wasn't able to make connections at home.
So you're trading your personal life
Yes.
for your travel life, which is one and the same to an extent, but being able to make a genuine connection. Now, I'm gonna ask a question behind that. Do you feel as though that some of the men you were meeting were intimidated by your world travels?
Absolutely. I mean, so there's this one, I think there was some intimidation about the world travels because no matter what stage you're at in a career, if you are jet setting, you sound fancy as hell.
Well, and they didn't know I'm jet setting on corporate dime,
Right.
which is different from regular jet.
Right. So yes, I am, but I'm also spending my day working just like you're spending your day working.
Right.
We're making about the same paycheck. I'm not able to spend mine as much because I'm gone.
Right.
But so it just feels like I'm fancy,
Right.
And then there's just the aspect of out of sight, out of mind. And then there's, somebody else who's willing to be there all the time. And then I think it's also, that conversation about expectations of a female partner. I used to jokingly say, either I would be a millionaire or whatever. I was like, if I had a wife at home, like my climb up the ladder would have been so much faster if somebody was there to take care of my laundry and my bed, like, because all the men I worked with would have wives at home who took care of everything.
Right.
And I was always like, if I had a wife at home, this would be so much easier. But it's just very different. And so I started to feel like there was a trade-off. And like you said, it began to feel like personal life or a fantasy life. Right. And it even began to actually manifest itself that way, where airports are kind of a haven for me. Like, I don't care if a flight gets delayed. I'm like super chill. Pull out my laptop, go to the lounge, you meet somebody will buy me drinks. Next thing you know, I'm having a party in the bar. Like, I can do an airport all day and have a great time. So, and then because there's something about, for me, like walking in the airport is automatic. Like, okay, everybody's off of my back. I'm about to be on this plane. You can't reach me for 8 hours.
Right.
You can leave. So it became like a place of kind of a refuge.
Wow.
And so I still have that, like when I sit down in a seat and I click my button, it's like, I can process things. I can think, like it's, it still has that like Pavlovian, that I still have that same Pavlovian effect. So it was very much like fantasy world. Because then I come home, I've got a mailbox filled with bills, and I'm sitting there going through, because look, I'm in my 40s, so we were still getting paper mail. So it's like all of this stuff is still coming, and, so it just was stressful in a way. So it began to feel like a trade-off between, like, am I going to keep hiding out in Wonderland, or am I going to, get real?
But you're not hiding out in a sense, right? Because it sounds like you went into a career that requires a lot of attention to detail. And not only do you require attention to detail, the different countries that you guys are doing business with require attention to detail, especially in African nations, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't think you're necessarily going into fantasy land. You're going where you can find peace.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think a lot, and, once again, mental health is becoming a more accepted conversation to be had. Shout out to getting the cheese back on my cracker, teaching Paige Benjamin and Ashley Nicole. But I think a lot of times people aren't acknowledging that, like, your jet setting is not necessarily jet setting. It's all right. I have, like you even said it, for that 8 hours, I have peace. Right. And even sometimes we don't realize it. Like, we realize we're just going on another trip. But it's not till we start to take inventory of how was I feeling, what was going on prior to you clicking that belt buckle. It was like you said, you had a lot of monkeys on your back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's not until you were able to, from the moment you go through security gates to the moment you check into your hotel, that's all you.
Yep. Yeah.
And once again, the pressures that you just mentioned, the pressures of having to find a mate, like societal pressures of having to find a mate, parental pressures of having to find a mate. You're a mate. Was it a maiden if you don't have?
They would literally buy slaughtering goats.
Right. So it's one of those things where, I think a lot of times we allow, the outside pressures to kind of label our peaceful time.
Yeah.
And so I interject that just to say, like, you weren't in La La Land. I could tell you some people that's in La La Land, but, you were finding peace, and your peace, like you even said it, like, I find refuge at an airport. Like, I don't know. I actually like the airport. It's one of those one of those places where you can find someone from almost anywhere. And it's a new experience every time you go to the airport. Even you don't, I mean, you probably run across the same flight attendants or some of the same, ticket attendants. But every time I go, because it's not as frequent, there's a new person to talk to, there's a new person to meet. And so, yeah, it's definitely an experience being at the airport, and you probably navigated it better than most, right? Being able to find the lounges. And listen, lounge access is only available to me within the last couple years. So, I'm more appreciative of the lounges because now I get to bring people I'm with to the lounges, right? Um, so yeah, so I just wanted to kind of interject and be like, you weren't in Wonderland, right? You were in your peaceful place. A lot of people, it's meditation that takes them there, but you have a physical place that brought you joy, peace, and harmony.
It really did. It really did. Yeah,
So
it really did.
so we were on the tails of you talking about Ethiopia. So my apologies.
Yes.
So Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Right. So I started to complain about having this. And I was like, oh, I'm going to Indonesia again. And I decided to sound like a real jerk, right? And so I get there, and number one, it's an African country. The project there was led by the British. And, we first walk in, and we're not in Addis, okay? We are in the valley where internet is, you were still getting it at an internet cafe.
Gotcha.
Like even when we came into the offices, we had to have somebody bring us special dongles, et cetera, there, so we could even get internet. Like you looked out the window and, dude was walking down the street with the chickens hanging out, So like it was a very rural place. And these Brits Ethiopia had not been colonized.
Right.
So then there was like, this conversation that I'm hearing around the lines of this Ethiopian construction. And I'm like, wait, what? Because, like a window might have slammed shut, something stupid, and then what they kind of kept wanting to allude to was
savages.
Yeah, since we didn't colonize them.
Right.
Anyway, that was happening. And then I am the lead of the team at this point, a Black woman with an African name. And I have a couple of young white boys who work with me. And then like my core team is also was predominantly minority. And these guys, they literally walked straight to the junior who was on the team, walked right past me, and started talking to the junior guy on the team. And I was like, now that's interesting. So we have that moment. And then I meet the women in the office, and, they're kind of like, so I can only imagine what they are dealing with. If I've dealt with it as somebody who has been sent from corporate within the first 10 minutes, right? So anyhow, as we're getting everything corrected, of course, that then, involves a display of, excuse me, sir, this is what I need, da-da-da-da-da, I'm not playing with you, da-da-da-da-da, all of that has to now happen. And these women are kind of watching it. And so the first day I eat lunch with the team, and I think I'm going to die. It's horrific. And, the women in the office are seeing me gag through this. And then the next day, one of them says, hey, we'd like for you to come with us for lunch. I said, okay. So she invites me into her home. And then she has her younger sister perform a coffee ceremony. And where they are actually roasting the coffee beans for me right there.
Oh, wow.
And then they lay out the leaves. And, if you've ever been fortunate enough to do this, Google it, look it up. But I get this, very informal coffee ceremony that her sister does for me. And then she brings out a tray, all of lentils and nuts or all of these things to eat with, my goodness, what's the name of the bread? Just jumped out of my head. And no, oh my gosh. We have to look this up because it's going to drive me nuts.
We'll look it up. The bread.
the bread,
Right.
but it's a very special bread, and it's like fermented and I can't believe I don't remember the name of it. I've been watched it. But anyway, so like eating this bread with this, it was so incredible. The meal was so good. And so after that, I was like, I'm hanging out with you from here on out.
Right.
And, she ended up reaching out to me like that weekend while we were there and invited me to like this 4-year-old's birthday party. And the 4-year-old's birthday party was this giant affair. Everybody was there.
Wow.
And then from there, we ended up going out at night and we were like doing the dances and then, like, the next day or right before I leave, she and her girlfriend arranged a whole Ethiopian photo shoot for me.
Oh, snips.
And so it was just like, then I got to like take that home and she gifted me with this cross. And it was just one of these moments when I realized this is why I travel,
Mm.
and this is why this is my blessing. And to be in a place and to get so connected to someone and to have them just pull you in,
No, no.
and give me their home. It was just so incredible. And that is what travel was about. And like I needed Ethiopia to remind me of my blessing that I've been able to see so much of the world.
Yeah, it sounds like, you know, part of what you're always not actively looking for, but when you travel, it's what can be home, right? Because from the first to now, like from your first story to the Congo to now, the women in the Congo made you feel at home. They made you feel part of a community. And the women in Ethiopia took you in literally to their home. And, you know, I would assume that the places you felt the least at home were probably your least favorite locations to visit.
Absolutely.
And so being able to tie that and the fact that travel is about wellness for you, right? A physical location can provide you that wellness that you're always looking for. And so that's super dope.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Morocco was on your bucket list and you attended for Voyage 22. Now, when Voyage 22 was initially presented to you, how was it presented? Because there's a story behind it, right? The initial story was, hey, we're going to Marrakesh. Let's go. And then I know a bunch of y'all just jumped at it. But I was like, hey, we need to tell people this is a wedding. So which story did you get when it was introduced to you?
So I was in story A.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're going to Marrakesh. What's going? I was like, I didn't even think she finished the sentence, and then I was online already. Like, I've been looking for the great excuse, so it was so perfect. I was just, thankful that this friendship led to a trip to Morocco. That was just how I felt.
And so leading up to the trip, right? So, were you one of the few, and, not to be in your pockets, but were you one of the few that was like, all right, we're going to pay this off right away and let's go? Or were you, was there planning involved in making sure that the trip was a reality for you?
Yes and no. Like, I was fortunate to be able to be like, so everything that needed to be paid immediately, I pretty much paid that immediately. And then I was late on everything else.
Okay. No, let's talk about that, right? Because, all right, so we have the hotels
Yeah.
and the flights,
Yes.
right? And then the excursions,
Yes.
right? So luckily the excursions came at a point where we had it set so that like everybody can pay those. So you were good, right? So but because you're a financial forensic accounting, right? How important is, budgeting and finance as it relates to kind of preparing for trips or going on a trip?
Well, for me, because travel is a priority, I always have room to make it happen.
Okay.
Like, I actually kind of realize sometimes whenever I think about, like, I've been challenged in the ways that I spend money. I've been called cheap.
John was not known that too well.
And I'm like, because it'll be certain things like, I know I was with a group of friends and they wanted to host a party for Juneteenth. And I'm like, oh, oh yeah, this is great. I'm all in. And then they're like, okay, so what, $1,000? I'm like, I pay $1,000 out? Like, no. I mean, so, I mean, and they were like, what are you talking about? You have it. And I'm like, no, I have $1,000 to go to Morocco. I have $1,000 to parties for some people I may or may not know, you know. I mean, so it's I just prioritize the way I spend my money very differently. I love cheap clothes, you know, with a cute bag or something like that. Because I mean, in the end, I want to be able to do those things freely. So I definitely kind of save money in other areas, and then travel is why I just enjoy rushing.
I don't blame you. I do this. I have an entire account only for travel money.
Yeah.
And when a trip comes up, let's go.
Yeah.
No hesitation.
Every credit card is designed to make travel easier.
Exactly. That's another
Wait.
cheat code. So that's actually a question I wanted to ask you was like, so I learned early on when I was traveling for work, get every rewards program possible.
Absolutely.
You know, my credit wasn't that great, so I couldn't get every card. But if you got a card, get a points versus cash back. Because you can always convert those into miles, into whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, how important was it for you? When did you realize that was a thing that you can do? Even with corporate travel, you can use your membership.
Yeah. So it was probably it was I'd been traveling. It wasn't the first round. I'd probably been traveling pretty consistently for about 5 years before I started to really get that I'm leaving money on the table. And it came with kind of watching the way one of my coworkers would accidentally use his travel credit card to get certain meals. And you know, and I'm like, it's like he was the one who actually told me it was the United Presidential Plus card at the time. Continental. It's Continental Presidential Plus at the time.
Big time.
And I remember like watching this, you know, how he kind of moved with that card. And then I finally decided to get one, and it was nuts, like, you know, all the benefits and everything. So that was when I learned, you know, this is to get the priority from it. But the first time I guess I ever actually like cashed in was we had Amex for work, and I think I bought a new computer for one of my cousins in Nigeria with my Amex points. And so I was like, okay, you know, it adds up to something, you know. So that was when I really started kind of paying attention. And then,
It just took off from there.
yeah, and then like then that Chase Sapphire card, you know, we need to blur this.
Let's
So,
get a check.
yeah, so we can,
Glad you- Uh-huh.
or send me 100,000 points.
But so that kind of takes me to the next questions that I have is about getting to Africa, right? Like from here to Africa. I know for some of us, our flights got canceled because of the connecting flight. What was that like for you?
I mean, I am the most nonchalant traveler you'll ever meet. It'll frustrate you if you are a planner and you need things buttoned up. I mean, our flight was canceled, and I was like, yeah, I saw that.
You know what? And I saw it too. I was like, they're gonna reschedule it for me,
It's gonna get fixed.
and it never got
And
rescheduled.
the shade get fixed.
Okay. So how long did it take you to realize, not to realize, but how long did it take you to be like, okay, maybe something else?
Yeah, it was actually when can I don't know how much of your business.
I don't
people
know.
know. Yeah, so it was whenever we were visiting your new house, and Jackie, not your wife, Jackie HD was like, where are you flying through? And I think I was just trying to at this point, when I rebooked my return trip, I had like did it to where I was gonna have like 10 flights so I could get as many flights. Because there's also like the strategizing for
So you
stats.
are, yes, that's so. What she's putting y'all game to is right. So my wife doesn't like connecting flights, so her flight was direct as direct as possible. I think it was New York to Casablanca, Casablanca to Marrakesh. I was trying like I was trying to do a multi-connecting flight like she did, but I had my dad with me. So it was like, you have to be mindful of that. But otherwise, listen, I'll do as many connecting flights as possible because those those segments add up to
Yeah.
your status. And so the more segments you take, the more listen. I was just talking to another guest, and I was like, he's like he wants to go to Thailand.
Mhm.
I was like, look, if you go to Thailand, might as well stop in London, might as well stop in, France, might as well stop in, Kenya, like do a couple of stops before you get there because, you're how many times are you gonna go back that direction?
Right.
You know?
And right now, COVID blessing, they have reduced the requirements
Oh,
to
wow.
reach different status levels. So I'm actually aiming for platinum this year.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Pardon
Because
me.
I mean, like, I, so I'm like, so can I do this in 10 flights? Like, because then I'll give it a go real quick. No, so right now they have like slightly reduced requirements. So I'm trying to get the platinum this year. But when I listened to Travel Tuesday with you and your wife,
Mhm.
you guys were talking about traveling with your parents.
Right.
And that inspired me to bring my mom
Oh, wow.
to Morocco.
And Mom Dukes, listen, Mom Dukes, we love you. I didn't know she was gonna do all of that, have you in the desert all crazy like, but I hope you enjoyed it. Look, Mom Dukes is on
She
camel.
loved it.
Mom Dukes, did she end up sandboarding?
No, she did not say it.
What? She was with what they call the shits, and so it was definitely an amazing
It was,
experience.
it was. But, or rather, and because she was with us, I went ahead and did a normal flight back. Jackie sat me down and was like, "Get your flight." So I did. And we booked it, just one layover and
Okay, she sounded a little disappointed, but you got to see. We're gonna get to that part.
yeah.
So hitting your bucket list location, like what was that experience like making it to Marrakesh?
Man, the thing was, so one, Marrakesh in and of itself was just amazing. But the idea that we could see all of Morocco, which I'm gonna let you
We
lead
gonna
us into.
no,
So I mean, but for me, really honestly, it was the food. I just it was like one, being able to be there, obviously, like for this very special moment to celebrate love. And then to celebrate love with people who loved the couple. And so it was like there's just that undercurrent that, this is already going to just jump off from the best place. Then to have a whole group of Black people be there and to travel with people I love. So a lot of my travel, was with coworkers. And mind you, I had some great teams, etc. But we would literally be at places looking at some gorgeous view and then say, I wish I was here with somebody I love. You know? So to be able to do that with people I love, like to be able to see the world, through their eyes,
Right. That's definitely
you
a
know.
trade-off when you travel for work. It's like, you go places like me seeing the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool for somebody to be here.
Yeah, like this could be a moment.
Right, right.
So
And so
I had moments in America.
got there.
Yeah.
The first official day, not the like landing day, but the first official day you guys went to the Medina.
Yes.
What were your thoughts around the Medina? Because that can be overwhelming for a lot of people.
So Medina was just real classic. I've experienced that to a degree before.
In Egypt? Or
And in a lot of places, right? Like the Medina is like an empanada or a meat pie or like everybody has one in a different language. A meat patty or, like everybody has one, right? And so whether it's the souk or in the market, like in Nigeria or, like there's always that square where real life happens and people are meeting to, this happens. It's available in a lot of different places. I shouldn't say everybody has one. Well, no, I think everybody has one. Look, we got it in Chinatown. So it's like there's a place where you get to haggle, and
it's also not encompassed by a labyrinth of city.
and that is true.
That's where it gets a little it's tricky because if you go in the wrong alley or the wrong street, you end up somewhere far from where
On the wrong corner, right?
right.
But that aspect of it was cool. I also was I remember thinking, And it's been a while since I traveled like that, so I do, but I remember telling my mom, "Don't buy anything yet."
You'll be back.
Yeah, we'll be back. We'll haggle and/or whenever we get into like for because we were gonna do this extension. I was like, when we get further away from the city, we'll be able to like relook at some of this stuff. So I mean, like the Medina was, I loved watching that experience. Just of knowing that energy of the energy of the Medina, the energy of the market.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So later that evening, we had an amazing cocktail hour and dinner. Tell us about that.
Oh my God. I actually just looked at those pictures again last night and I sent my mom some of them. But it was just beautiful. Number one, I just think I love a good theme. And obviously your wife does too. And so I'm like, just tell me what the theme is. So like to get there and one to see the way that everybody just leaned into the thing, and then in doing so, all of these beautiful colors and just seeing how good everybody looked. Everybody just looked so good. And then just the fun, like, because there was like, when we were out there having dancing and kicking it, watching everybody like kind of towards the end of the night, those people who don't know how to go home and they just sitting up there having a good time and the party just kept going. It was just kind of dope to see, everybody as they just kind of kept loosening up. And even though it was this really fancy, formal type of affair, Black people know how to have a good time. So we could be buttoned all the way up and have a good time all the way too.
And so the dinner table. Tell me about this dinner table.
That dinner table was, first of all, the dinner table was long.
Mm.
And what I saw just kind of standing at the end, I remember walking down and just standing at one end and seeing how long it was and commending you guys for bringing this many people to Africa for, I'm sure the first time, for the vast majority. Never mind how many people it was the first time getting out of the country. And then just to get people to come to this bar to celebrate your life, like, I mean, it was a long table. And I just thought the length of the table said a lot, right? And then just the decorations, the thing that consistently struck me was how beautiful it was and how simple it was, right? Like it was the branches and then just the trees and then the lights. And it was very simple and natural and absolutely gorgeous. It was just beautiful.
And the dancing you're talking about was in the owner's house.
Oh, yeah.
Right? She
Yeah.
let us. So
Yeah.
the owner of Janan Tamsla, I'm saying that correctly, right? Um, she let us celebrate the reception of that dinner in her home, and she has a corridor that's just open,
Hmm.
and it was like we were outside but inside at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a dope vibe.
It
Like,
was.
chilling, and we brought in DJ Reg, hooked up the music alongside one of the local DJs. But yeah, that definitely was a dope experience. I mean, people wouldn't leave. Like, Wanda, you next. Wanda was in and out. She was like, "All right, I'm going home," and the next thing you know, she's on the dance floor again, and someone else is escorting her home. Um, and so that night's over. It was sunglasses and Advil the next day.
Yeah, because we had a good time. I have video of us walking, just walking over and over.
And so,
Proud of our outfits and stuff.
sunglasses and Advil the next day up until 1 o'clock. And then we got the beautiful wife coming up to the area. Like, what was that feeling like, the energy like in that space? And then, go into like, kind of, my freestyle off the dole vows. You know what I'm saying? Whoop, whoop. And but just tell people like, what was that experience like?
Well, it was so cool because we kind of talked about this at your wedding. Like, I feel like I have a kind of slightly different view of the two of you because I've only known you as a couple together. And so, while for me, I'm obviously happy to be there and be a part of it. I think that you two are an amazing couple, just two powerhouses who beautifully complement each other. But, or rather, and those who have known either of you longer, um, there was so much anticipation about like the finale, so to speak, which is also just the beginning, but or the finale of those particular chapters for you. And so what was just like you could feel it like that. I don't even have the word for it, but like to hear like the way people were crying, and that like that. And I know this feeling because I've had it before for my best friend where you're crying throughout the entire wedding. And it's just like profound happiness and love and, knowing that you are turning your friend over um, to someone that they trust, and so, just kind of being able to be on the outside looking in while being inside of that was really quite beautiful. Like, and it was on both sides. Like your dudes were the same way in terms of, like we've been here, we know, and so it's just that was like you could feel it. You could just literally feel that energy of love and support and that carrying. Like this community is hugging you.
Right.
And then like even I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
So it's like even like with the officiant,
Right, right.
right? And Claudius and just in your vows, like the request was actually made, right? And but it was already it didn't need to be requested and you could feel that.
Okay.
Like, you all were being hugged by your family and we took these vows. And that's how it very much felt like we took these vows.
Awesome, awesome. And the one thing that I do, um, you know, Jackie likes to volunteer people things a lot, but she did ask y'all to hold us,
Absolutely.
and that's the biggest thing. Like the people that were there, we know hopefully will always be willing to pull our coattails, tell us when we're right, when we're wrong.
Absolutely.
And you guys are our village, right? And I think a lot of the times people don't realize that your village doesn't have to be huge. It's just the people that are there that can be reliable and dependable. Um,
And who always want the best for you.
exactly. So I'm gonna move forward a little bit. So the wedding happens, then a couple days later, you are extending your trip.
Yes.
Let's talk about that because I seen you guys had number one. Shout out to Saheed. Shout out to Stella Travels. Um, y'all did your thing. Saheed, you are the real MVP. We would be lost literally without you. So let's talk about like this extension because you know, I actually like the fact that Saheed came to the airport with the Stella Travels waiting for us, taking photos of the first groups to come in and everything. And then navigating 50 plus people in and out the Medina, in and out the YSL. And we didn't even talk about the hammam, how they were able, let's talk about this hammam real quick before we continue.
Woo. I used my mom hand mitt today.
Let's talk about this hammam because, I felt some type of way that the last time I was there, I didn't get a chance to experience the hammam. And so this time around, I'm like, look, I need to go to the hammam by all means necessary. And I even brought my dad. Yo, my dad literally fell asleep during hammam.
Yeah, so did I.
So what was that like? If you can talk about that experience, what was that like for you?
Okay, so there's a few different levels, right? Like, I mean, number one, I was like, this is just so fancy. And I just felt so fancy. I was like, I'm so fancy, I don't have to wash my own ass today. Like, that's how I felt about this. Like, just the idea of it, okay? And literally, they want everything. So, I mean, there's a point where you're like,
How far are they?
am I okay with well, you know what? It's clean now. So we have to just move on. And it was just like incredible, like that kind of the luxuriousness of that whole thing.
Right.
And then we got a massage, and it's like you're just feeling steamed and cleaned and relaxed. And I honestly feel like that's something you should do anytime you travel someplace to a distance. Just go and relax and get cleaned and massaged and waxed.
Mm.
Actually, I should do that this weekend.
Okay, so she's gonna find her a hammam in the city somewhere and enjoy herself. So I kind of backtracked, but I'm gonna move forward again. Um, this extension of your trip, like once again, shout out to Stella Sahi, like glamping in the desert. Then you're traveling from the Sahara to Fez to Casablanca.
We literally went from the west to the east, all the way back to the west. Like we traversed all of Morocco from east to west,
Mm.
and in doing so, hit all of the major cities.
Mhm.
And what I said about Saeed is he he treated us like royalty while treating us like family. While making us feel like family.
Right, right.
It really, and I was like, and that's an interesting balance. Like, one to make sure we were up on time and, and like we were at one point we're negotiating, like, man, how about we just sleep till 9 today? But and then I mean the glamping in the desert, whatever they could do, they did. Being able to see the parts of Morocco that are not necessarily seen. And, for me, if you know me, I obviously kind of ended up tapping into some of like the social stuff that was underneath, you know, and and
We gonna talk about
and like having a conversation about, okay, wait a minute, Berbers versus the Arabs versus, so that was interesting. Anytime I go to a country, I always learn how to say thank you in their language. And so um, I had gotten practiced in saying shukran, which is thank you in Arabic. And then I remember saying shukran whenever we went further south and east. And the guy, and it was interesting because I noticed him. I said shukran, and he kind of like nodded, and then he kind of backed away, and then he came back and he says, "Here you can say 10 minutes." Forgive me my pronunciation. And I was like, okay, so 10 minutes. But just in that, I knew that there was something there, right? About, the language, where I need to say thank you. And so it was just kind of interesting, kind of, tapping into that. And then I ended up just asking Saeed straight up, like, tell me a little bit more about this. And what was also incredible is just our tour guide also is very active in giving back to the nomad community. And that is really very specifically, a way to support people and having that understanding that there are some yeah, well, similarities. We are not the only oppressed people in the world, and it might not quite look the same, but it's still out there, and I love the opportunity to be able to impact it in another land.
So, what was your favorite city to visit in that span? Because you guys did an extra 5.
Yeah, so it was an extra 5 days. We traveled one day, like all the way. I don't even remember. Everything was kind of merging together. But we ended up going out into the desert. We glamped in the desert. I mean, mountains, sand dunes, all of that around. But the glamping was probably the best. I mean, it was like the one, like you drive up, then you get on your camel, right? And then they walk you through, like, and it was funny because my mom was like on the lead camel, and you're up here and you just, walking along, and it's not an uncomfortable ride, but it's not an easy ride. But hell, you're riding a camel. I mean, I don't know what I would have expected. So then we get there and they've got these solar energy things, which is like, oh, that's kind of cool. Of course they do. And then, they take you in and just the neighborhood, so to speak, the tents area. So they've got these tents lined up, one dining hall, And it was just gorgeous. The rooms were gorgeous, the water pressure, everything. Like it was just great. It was a great experience. And then the food was good, wonderful entertainment. They had these Sudanese entertainers come up because, as we were closer to the desert, we were closer to, I guess, really the Saharan. So now we're getting to maybe move just beyond that. And you're starting to see more darker people, sub Saharan African. And so in that space, like is, having them come and share some of their culture and music with us, the food. And then like, so we traveled to Fez and that was look, the food. And when we were in Fez, like that was the place. It was so amazing. The Riad that we stayed at, the woman there prepared whatever you requested that night. And and like, we were like, oh, this food was made with love. Like, if you made a request, you were going to get it and it was going to taste so good. She's in there. You can see her cooking in the kitchen. I mean, just every day when we would come back, we were just in that place. We stayed there a couple of nights. We were just excited about whatever she was going to make the next day. Like, it was so nice. Um, and again, just one of those places where you get this luxurious surrounding and it's not opulent. I don't know, it's like you have all of these right things where the furnishings are plush and beautiful, but it's not like overly over the top. So it still feels very homey and but gorgeous, or rather and gorgeous. So that Fez was incredible. Casablanca, I think I could do again. Maybe not during Ramadan. I think Casablanca was the only place where I felt like being there during Ramadan impacted
Your experience.
the experience.
Okay. Did you want to go back home?
And probably by then I did actually. I mean, yeah, I mean,
Not no offense to Casablanca.
yes, no offense to Casablanca.
Up during Ramadan is probably everything is shut down.
Yeah,
Can't really do much. Like nightlife is probably not what.
yes. But I mean, we did make it to Rick's where we did find another group of Black travelers, beautiful women. They were there, I think, for a friend's birthday or something. But, it was nice just to, see us again. You're like, "Ooh, look, I see that skin and I hear that accent." So it was amazing though. I mean, the whole trip, by the time we got there, we were like, look, let's just relax, take our time. We've seen everything there is. And, this was a trip of a lifetime.
Mm. So as well traveled as you are, you mentioned earlier that during this one trip to Ethiopia, you were passed for the junior staff, right? Um, do you find that actually I'm not gonna ask that question. What has your experience while black been?
It's interesting because
Because you have two worlds, right?
Mhm.
You have that corporate travel,
Yeah.
and you have the individual travel. But sometimes,
And then you layer that on being African,
yeah,
being African American,
right,
right? Like, so it's all very different, right? Like, so from the corporate space and then the traveling while black, I think it's actually not that different, right? Because the way a country tends to react to their women will be how the employees react to me as a woman, right? So in America, something like that could happen. Might not be as likely to happen, to be honest.
today or
To today and in general. But what would happen, it would be a subtle undermining. Well, they might recognize that I'm the lead there, but then there'll be a separate conversation that happens as though I don't know what I'm talking about. Now that's available. There's just no way if her happens in countries where there's just no way it would have been me.
right.
So it really does kind of just depend on where I'm at. Um, and I think and it's layered because in some places, like just because of the way I dress, I'm clearly very Western, right? So if I am appearing very Western, it's a little easier for me. If I'm in a space and I'm appearing more African, not as Western, and I'm wearing like native clothing, I'm treated slightly different and slightly different in different places. And so there is, and that's where I'm like, is it class? That's kind of where I wonder.
So I was speaking to Cecilia during her interview. Her ability to speak Spanish changed the trajectory of what her trips would be like. So from her perspective, being able to speak the language determines kind of the class in which you're in. So maybe seeing you in different like levels was what led them to treat you that different. Um, and so like overall, what would you say your experience has been like, personal wise?
Generally pretty positive. I don't take things personally. Because one, it would become too stressful to fight every battle. Two, it is pure ignorance, and it really has nothing to do with me.